Now, as we read on the question, she recorded her observations in the table, count the number of woodlice in each area of choice chamber, record them in the table. ये सारा कुछ हो गया. And you then say calculate the mean number. उसके 1 mark थे for writing that. So 2422, you wrote that. You got 1 mark for that. This 1 mark was for that. Then you have 2 marks for calculating the nearest whole number. So you can see I've given two colors to it. This is 1 mark. This is 1 mark, and this is for the second mark. So you have to get both of them right. And please remember, in biology, there's no 0.5. So you have to get the 2 marks for this. So record these results in the table. And nearest whole number was something which you had to realize you couldn't have written it in fraction because wood lice could not be in fraction. Then construct a bar chart to provided to show the mean number of wood lice to the nearest whole number found in each area of the choice chamber. So bar chart, remember, please, we have got to use the whole space. And as you can see, as because I have 40 small squares, and that's a way of I expressing it. So 40 small squares, so divide by 5 comes to 8. So I've taken 8 is the scale which I've taken. And so 8 is equal to this up to here. 8 is equal to 1, then the next 8 is 2, and so I've made it less. So mean number of wood lice. And then it said you draw a bar chart. Now imagine when a bar chart, important thing is the bars must have space in between them. And the regulation is that the space of the bar and the space between the bars should be the same number of small squares. So I've taken that as 5, and I have sort of spread it so that I've used the whole of the grid. And then you have to label these, so dark and dry and dark, damp and light, and dry and light. So this is how you do the bar chart. Now you realize this bar chart is for 4 marks. And the 4 marking scheme is labeling the axis, then the correct plotting, and then the four of them, and then labeling them and labeling the x-axis and the y-axis. So this is how you would have got your 4 marks. And if you look at the mark scheme, these are the 4 mark scheme points for labeling and plotting this graph. Then coming on to part C1, using the data in the table and your bar chart, state which area of the choice chamber the wood lice preferred. Naturally, you can see where there were more, so that would be damp and dark. Now that wasn't something very difficult, but naturally the thing is that they would prefer that area where they were more in numbers. Suggest where the student could have placed the 10 wood lice when she first put them into the choice chamber. Explain your answer. You see, why they're asking you this question is because they want to see how you have developed practical skills. That when you're doing a practical, you have to be fair, scientifically fair. So if you put them on one side and they were sluggish, they'll probably just stay there. And the next time you put them on the light side, or you put them in the dark side, or you put them in the dry side. So it should have been a random thing, and you should have decided the same for all of them. So placed in the center would be a good idea because then they can move here and there and decide where to go. And to avoid bias. Now, what is this word bias mean? Bias means favoritism. Like for instance, I decide to take 5 students out with me to Hardee's. Now, how do I choose the 5 students? Well, if I do not have any favorites, then what I will do is I will say there are 20 students in the class. So I will write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll have 20 pieces of paper in a basket. And I said, okay, please, everybody pick up a little piece of paper from the basket. And anybody who gets that 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, the rest of the paper just had nothing written on it. So then I'm not going to pick my favorites and say, okay, well, so and so, so and so, so and so, you are going to come with me. These are the 5, my favorites. But if I said it's unbiased and it's random, then I would ensure that I picked up 5 random students. Now, this is some of the English which some of you do not understand. The word random, the word bias. You need to look this up. You need to look up in the dictionary and see what these words mean in the English meaning. So I have used the word favoritism. So so if you don't favor them, if you put them on the light side, then they maybe all stay there. But if you put them in the center, then wherever they move in 20 minutes would be a sort of a clear test that they liked that side of the choice chamber. They liked the light side, or they liked the dark side, or they liked the damp side. So this is what you have to understand. They're not asking you the reason for it. Don't be, this is not even in your syllabus to know which sides they would like. So you're not supposed to be actually knowing that. So don't worry about that. Don't fret about that. Then it says part 3 suggests 2 ways in which the results of this investigation could be made more reliable. Now, I've always said this to you many, many times. Reliable. Reliable means repeat. Are reliable, are repeat. Reliable means that you are 100% sure that this is the way it will happen every time. Like, for instance, you're doing an experiment on temperature and enzymes. So you say, okay, increasing temperature increases the rate of reaction. And you know that after doing many, many, many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of experiments, you come with this conclusion, and the rate increases till the optimum. And then, of course, if you increase the temperature above the optimum, it will decrease. So R repeat, R reliable. Now this is the one that you've got to remember. So more repeats gets you 1 mark. Leave longer than 20 minutes. So maybe, sort of they take a little longer time. And if you see them after 40 minutes, if it's the same that it was after 20 minutes, then that means you're 100% sure that your experiment was correct. Then more wood lice. You only use 10 of them. So maybe if you use 20 of them and 30 of them, then of course, if all of them behave in the same manner, then that means that's the standard procedure. So leave longer than 20 minutes, more wood lice, and you use more wood lice, and you use the same type or the same species of wood lice, because there are many, many different types of wood lice. Then question 4, another student says that it would be a good idea to make some holes in the lid of the choice chamber. Suggest one advantage and one disadvantage. Well, then think of it. If you're doing it in the lab, advantage, yes, provide air, because they're all respiring. They're all respiring, and oxygen is needed for aerobic respiration. So able to add more wood lice, or you could add more wood lice if you wanted to, make the experiment from 10 to 20. Then disadvantage affects moisture, because if there is wind coming in, or there's a fan blowing in the room, then of course it could dry it out. So that damp place could have become dried out, and they would actually move away from it after 5 minutes or 10 minutes when if there was a fan blowing in the room. Or the wood lice can escape. So always visualize that you're doing this in the lab and what would happen to it if that suggestion was made. So this is one thing which you always need to do in the paper 6, is to visualize that you're actually doing this in the lab in the school, and you're doing it in the lab, this experiment. That was 14 marks, and we'll discuss the grade boundary at the end of this when we finish this paper. Now we come to question number 2. The photograph shows a mammalian organ, and there's labeled E, which is the trachea, and D is the lungs, and then there is a line, there's an F and G on it, which of course is just there for another part of the question. So identify the organ labeled D. You know it was the lung, and the structure E was the trachea. So everybody knows that, and you just have to write it. Spelling should have been correct. If it was a very weird spelling, probably we won't give you a mark for that. The B part of the question said, in the space below, make a large drawing of structures D and E as they appear in the photograph, and do not include the surface details of structure D in your drawing. So basically, you have to draw the trachea and the lung, and you have to measure this part, F and G. And as you can see in the later part of the question, on the photograph, draw a line between F and G. Now, this was on the previous page. This was the line F and G was here. So that you measured was 39. That of course would be the same for all the students, because that was the diagram given in the paper. But then it said, on the photograph, draw a line between F and G, measure and record the length. So photograph was the one which was I just referred to, 39. Then on your drawing, now this is the drawing. Now what you have to understand is, this is the drawing which we are talking about. So this was the drawing that we are talking about. Drawing is the one you've made. Draw a line at the same location as the line F and G. So this was the same location as the line F and G on that part of the. So we draw that, and you measure the record. It was 88 millimeters. Now units are written here, but sometimes units are not written. Then you get a mark for the units. Then use your measurements, calculate the magnification, 8 to 88 over. So basically, you just have to divide it, because the drawing was larger than that. And so 88 over there. The answer was 2.2564, but it said give your answer to 1 decimal place. So if you had to give your answer to 1 decimal place, that would be 2.3. So I hope that is clear to everybody. Then the part D of the question said the photo micrographs show the details of the same organ from a smoker and a non-smoker. And then the smoker has, you can see these large spaces, and the alveoli and the alveolus and the blood vessel. Then you have to see the blood vessel, and then you have to see the blood vessel there and that side as well. So complete the table to identify two differences. Now these are very easy, 2 marks, but you usually don't get these 2 marks. Why? Because you're not doing a comparative analysis. So compare, complete. So smoker, large alveoli, small alveoli. Better if you use the word larger, smaller. So large, small, and here the small blood vessels and the larger blood vessels. So this was what was expected out of you all when you had been there. So this was an easy 2 marks, but as I say, you usually don't get it because you don't look at it very carefully and you don't make these comparisons. Now we come on to question number 3. Now, question number 3 was a little different. Usually, we don't have a question 3 in the ATPs, but in this paper, we do have a paper 3. A student investigated the effect of exercise on a pulse rate using the step test. The details of the step test are shown below. That you step on it, you stand by it, then you step on it, and then you put your other foot on it, and then you step down, and then you come straight. So, repeat the step exercise as shown in the diagram continuously for 4 minutes. I often talk about this step test as well. Rest for 1 minute, then count the number of heartbeats for 15 seconds. Rest for a further 45 seconds, then count the number for 15 seconds. Rest for a final 45 seconds, and then count the number. Use your results to calculate the heartbeats per minute. Now, that was not a very difficult part of the question, and you have to see what the table shows the results. Complete the table by calculating the total number. So, here is the total number of heartbeats for the 3 minutes. So, you just have to add all of them, and so this is what you had to do is, so you got a figure of 320. And it says the resting pulse rate of the student before exercising was 16 heartbeats in 15 seconds. So you know there are 4 15 seconds in a minute, so calculate the number of heartbeats in a minute and for the resting pulse. So that was 64. Then use your answer in A2 and the data in the table to state the effect. State the effect means you just have to state that the one word answer is good enough. Effect of exercise on the pulse rate, it increases. Then coming on to question part 4, the fitness rating of an individual can be calculated using the formula 24,000 total number of heartbeats for the 3 minutes after the step exercise. Use in the given information to calculate the student's fitness and to determine her fitness rating. So 24,000 divided by 320 gets you 75. That was the fitness. And so 75 comes under this heading, and this was very good. So a very basic question on, they expect you to understand the practical. They expect you to then come up with analysis of the data and then give us the answers on that. Then the B part of the question says the graph shows the pulse rate of an unfit student and a fit student before. Now, this was the important thing, which I missed out also when I was doing the question for the first time. Before, during, and after doing the step test. So this would, of course, this would be the one which was before, this part, the 2 minute before. And then this one would be the during, and then this would be the after. Now, describe the difference in pulse rate between. Describe means no biology. You just have to give me a description of the graph. So, describe the difference in pulse rate between the unfit and the fit student. So, first of all, you tell me, are you talking about the unfit student or are you talking about the fit student? So, you must give me this heading. This heading is very important because otherwise, I'm going to assume you're talking about the unfit student because that is the first in the question. So please write that the fit student had a lower pulse rate throughout, had a lower resting pulse rate increases more slowly, at peak pulse rate is lower, and pulse rate returns to resting quickly. So there was a time frame which was it was returning to it quickly. Now these were the points you had to look from the graph. There's now no prior information that you had to know. Then it says use the graph to calculate the difference in pulse rate between the unfit and the fit student 6 minutes after starting the exercise. Now, when I looked at 6 minutes, I started looking at 6 minutes and I didn't realize that I was supposed to look at 8 minutes. Why was I supposed to look at 8 minutes? Because this graph was before, so this time was before. I had missed this out and I was looking at 6 minutes. And then I realized, oh, no, I'm getting this wrong. So it was at 8 minutes that you had to look at it. Why? Because this was 6 minutes. It said during 6 minutes after starting the exercise. So space for working was, of course, you have to give me 112 minus 66, so it's 46 beats per minute. And you realize the 2 marks, there was one was for the 46 and the other was for the units. And of course, if you gave me this working as well, you got a mark for this. Now let's look at the grade boundary. Now, as you can see, this is the June 21 paper 6-1. Now, when you look at the grade boundary, now if you look at the grade boundary, the grade thresholds for June 21, paper 6-1 was a total marks of 40 marks. And if you got a 29, well, that was an A. If you got a 25, that was a B. And if you got 21, that was a C. And if you got 18, that was a D. And if you got a 16, that was an E. So out of 40, you had to get, if you want an A, well, you had to get 29. But then, of course, it would be, of course, added to all your other papers, your 1 and 2 and 6. So for the paper 1, as you can see, the grade boundary was 27. For this 28, so that's roughly that. And for 2-1, it was 47 for both the papers because they're probably the same difficulty level. We don't do 3 in Pakistan, so that was not considered. So you must be very aware of the grade boundaries and you must know how many marks you can lose in order to get an A, because you all think you will get an A, but then you don't get an A because you do a lot of wishful thinking. And please look at these grade boundaries and be aware of this. That helps you to really prepare well for the exam. So that will be all for this paper, and I hope this has been helpful. I'll be posting more paper 6 in the coming days. And I hope this is going to be good to you and easy for you to do your paper 6 in the November exam coming ahead. Thank you very much.